Chosen one, stop whatever you are doing and listen carefully, because this message is not ordinary and it is not random. There is a reason your eyes landed on this video at this exact moment, and there is a reason your spirit suddenly feels alert while hearing these words. Something has been shifting around you quietly for days, and deep inside your heart, you already know it. That strange heaviness in your chest was never imagination. That pressure you felt while sitting alone at night was never stress alone. Heaven has been trying to get your attention, while the enemy has been desperately trying to keep you distracted. And before this message continues, I need you to do something important. Silence every distraction around you, because this is not a message meant to be shared with people who cannot understand the season you are entering. Some words are too sacred to be explained to people who only listen with their mind and not with their spirit. Lately you have felt disconnected from your surroundings, like you are physically present, but spiritually somewhere else. People around you have noticed the change, even if they never said it directly. Conversations feel strange now. The atmosphere in your own home feels unfamiliar, and there are moments when you stare at the ceiling at night, wondering why everything suddenly feels distant, even when everyone is still around you. But what if I told you this strange season is not an attack to destroy you, but preparation to transform you? What if this uncomfortable silence is actually heaven making room for a new assignment that requires a different version of you? There is a reason the enemy has been fighting your peace harder than ever recently, because he already sensed what was coming before you did. He knows there is a shift happening in your spirit, and once you fully recognize it, you will never think the same way again. For a long time you carried the emotional weight of people who were never assigned to your destiny. Permanently, you became the safe place for everyone else, while silently breaking inside yourself. Every time somebody called you with their problems, you answered. Every time someone needed comfort, you showed up. Every time somebody needed wisdom, you emptied yourself, trying to help them survive their storm. While nobody noticed, you were drowning quietly in your own. And the dangerous part is, you became so used to carrying everyone that you forgot what it felt like to carry yourself. You forgot your own dreams, your own calling, your own spiritual identity, because you became addicted to being needed. And now that God is slowly removing certain people from your daily emotional dependence, it feels uncomfortable, because your spirit is learning how to survive without constant validation from others. But this isolation is not rejection. This season is heaven teaching you how to hear God's voice without the noise of everybody else's expectations surrounding your mind every second of the day. Right now there are people around you who can feel your energy changing, even though they cannot explain it. That is why some relationships feel awkward lately. That is why certain conversations suddenly stopped flowing naturally. Your spirit is stepping into another level, and not everybody is designed to follow you there. Some people were assigned to an older version of you, and now they can sense that version is disappearing. They are uncomfortable because they do not understand who you are becoming. But hear me carefully. Not everyone who grows distant from you is your enemy. Sometimes people move away because heaven is rearranging your environment for your next assignment. And the reason this hurts so deeply is because part of you still wants to be understood by people who were never spiritually prepared to understand your purpose. You keep trying to explain your heart to people who can only recognize the version of you that benefited them emotionally. But God is not creating another comfortable version of you. He is creating a dangerous version of you, dangerous to fear, dangerous to limitation, dangerous to every chain that once kept you spiritually small. And that transformation cannot happen while you are constantly seeking permission from people who are attached to your old identity. Listen carefully, because this next part matters more than you realize. The loneliness you have been experiencing recently is not ordinary loneliness. It is spiritual separation. Before elevation, heaven often isolates the people it plans to use in powerful ways because crowds can corrupt clarity. When Moses heard the voice of God, he was alone in the wilderness. When Joseph received the dream that changed his life, he was separated from the comfort of home. When David was anointed king, he was forgotten in a field while everybody else stood inside the house trying to look important. And now in your own life, you are entering a season where God is removing distractions, because what He is about to place inside your spirit cannot survive in an environment filled with confusion and noise. This is why your desire for isolation has increased lately. This is why your spirit feels tired after being around too many people. This is why your heart suddenly craves silence more than attention, because your soul is preparing to receive instructions that require complete focus, and the enemy knows once you receive those instructions clearly, your life will never return to the version it once was. And there is something else you need to understand before we continue. The strange emotional exhaustion you have been carrying is not because you are weak, it is because you have been fighting battles nobody else could see. Every smile you forced while your heart was breaking silently, every moment you pretended to be okay just to protect other people from worrying about you, every night you sat alone replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you were the problem, all of it has been draining your spirit slowly. But heaven saw every hidden battle you fought in silence. Heaven heard every prayer you whispered while trying not to cry too loudly. And the reason this message feels personal is because God has been watching you survive seasons that would have destroyed weaker people. You survived disappointment without becoming bitter. You survived betrayal without losing your ability to love. You survived loneliness without completely giving up on hope. And now, heaven is responding to your endurance by preparing a shift that will change the direction of your entire life. Something powerful is about to happen in this story, because the enemy thought isolation would break you, but isolation actually awakened you. For years, you believed your purpose was connected to fixing everybody else. You thought being available for people was proof that you mattered, and because of that mindset you tolerated emotional exhaustion longer than you should have. You kept answering calls that drained your peace. You kept carrying conversations that left your spirit empty. You kept sacrificing your own healing just to make sure everybody else felt comfortable around you. But slowly God started exposing the truth to your spirit. You cannot fulfill a divine assignment while constantly abandoning yourself to rescue people who refuse to grow. And this realization created conflict inside you because your heart still loves deeply even while your spirit knows certain. Attachments are unhealthy. This is why you feel torn between wanting distance and still wanting connection. Part of you misses the old comfort, while another part of you knows you can never fully return to the person you used to be. Because once heaven opens your eyes, you cannot pretend to stay spiritually asleep. Recently, you may have noticed strange patterns happening around your life. Doors closing unexpectedly, plans changing suddenly, people acting differently without explanation, moments where everything felt delayed for no reason, and you kept asking yourself why nothing feels stable anymore. But instability is often the first sign that transformation has already started. Before a new chapter begins, the old one always becomes uncomfortable to remain inside, and that discomfort you feel is heaven pushing you out of environments that no longer match your future. Some relationships were only designed for a temporary season. Some habits were only meant for an older version of you. Some emotional patterns survived only because you kept feeding them with fear and insecurity. But now God is removing everything that cannot survive where you are going next. And yes, it feels painful because growth always requires separation from something familiar. But you cannot step into a new identity while still clinging to the comfort of your old limitations. There are nights when you sit quietly wondering why your spirit feels restless even after praying, and the answer is because your soul recognizes that your current life can no longer contain the level you are about to enter. Something inside you knows change is necessary, even when your mind feels afraid of it. This is why you suddenly feel uncomfortable doing things that once felt normal. This is why certain conversations irritate your spirit now. This is why your tolerance for fake energy has disappeared. Your discernment is becoming sharper because heaven is preparing you for environments where your spiritual awareness will matter deeply, and the people who once underestimated you are slowly beginning to realize you are not the same person anymore. They can feel your distance emotionally. They can feel your silence becoming stronger than your words. And even though they cannot explain it, they know something about you has changed permanently. But here is where the enemy attacks the hardest. He waits until transformation begins and then fills your mind with fear. He whispers that you are losing everybody. He tells you that you are becoming too distant, too emotional, too difficult to understand. He tries convincing you that your spiritual growth is actually selfishness, because if he can make you feel guilty for evolving, then he can keep you trapped in environments that no longer deserve access to your energy. And many chosen people destroy their own breakthrough because they confuse divine separation with personal failure. They run back to unhealthy environments just to avoid loneliness. They dim their light just to make insecure people comfortable again. But you cannot shrink yourself forever simply because other people are intimidated by your growth. Eventually, you must choose between staying emotionally accepted or becoming spiritually fulfilled. The next part of this message is where everything becomes deeper, because what God revealed about your future will explain why the enemy has been attacking your confidence so aggressively lately. There is a reason your mind has been under unusual pressure recently. The enemy understands that if he can weaken your confidence, he can delay your obedience. And obedience is what terrifies darkness the most, because once a chosen person fully accepts who they are spiritually, there is nothing hell can do to stop their impact. That is why your insecurities suddenly became louder. During the exact season heaven started calling you higher, the attacks increased because your purpose increased. And instead of recognizing the attack for what it was, you started questioning yourself, questioning your value, questioning your future, questioning whether you were truly capable of becoming the person God placed inside your spirit years ago. But let me remind you of something powerful. Every major transformation in Scripture began with uncertainty. Even the people chosen by heaven doubted themselves before stepping into destiny. Moses doubted his voice, Gideon doubted his strength, Esther doubted her courage, Peter doubted his faith. Yet, heaven still used them because divine calling is not built on human perfection, it is built on obedience. And the truth is, you already feel the shift happening inside you, even if you cannot fully explain it yet. There are moments now when your spirit suddenly feels powerful for no reason, moments where you feel disconnected from the old version of yourself, moments where your intuition becomes sharper and your desire for deeper purpose becomes impossible to ignore. And these moments are not random emotional swings. They are evidence that your spirit is waking up to the assignment heaven placed over your life long ago. The problem is your environment still reflects your old identity, while your soul is preparing for a new one. And living between those two realities feels exhausting. It feels like carrying two versions of yourself at the same time, one trying to stay familiar and another trying to break free completely. And tonight, while many people sleep without purpose, heaven is quietly preparing your next chapter. The doors that looked permanently closed are about to shift unexpectedly. The confusion that kept clouding your mind is beginning to clear, and the same people who misunderstood your silence will eventually realize they were watching transformation happen in front of them the entire time, because isolation was never your punishment, it was your preparation. Your spirit was never abandoned, it was being rebuilt, and everything that felt delayed was actually being aligned for the exact timing heaven intended. There is something happening behind the scenes of your life right now that most people around you cannot see. While they look at your silence and assume you are struggling, heaven is actually rebuilding your spirit in ways that will soon become impossible to ignore. And the reason this season has felt so emotionally intense is because God is removing every false layer you built just to survive painful environments. For years you learned how to hide your exhaustion behind fake strength. You learned how to smile while silently falling apart inside. You learned how to comfort everybody else while secretly begging heaven to send somebody who would finally understand your own pain. But this new season is different because God is no longer allowing you to survive through pretending. The mask is becoming too heavy to wear. The role you played for people is collapsing, and the version of you that constantly sacrificed peace just to maintain relationships is finally dying. That is why your emotions feel stronger lately. That is why old memories suddenly return at random moments, because heaven is exposing wounds you ignored for too long, so true healing can finally begin. The enemy wanted you distracted during this season because he understood how important this transformation truly is. He knew that once you stopped chasing external validation, you would become dangerous spiritually. He knew that once you realized your worth did not depend on how useful you were to other people, everything would change permanently. And this is why certain relationships suddenly became confusing. People who once depended on your constant availability started acting distant when you began protecting your energy. Some people became uncomfortable the moment you stopped over-explaining yourself, and others quietly pulled away because they sensed they could no longer control your emotions the same way they used to. But do not mistake this separation for failure, because not everybody who exits your life was assigned to walk with you into your future. Some people were only temporary lessons meant to teach you discernment, strength, and boundaries before your real assignment began. There are moments lately when you feel like nobody fully understands what is happening inside your spirit, and that feeling has made you question yourself more than once. But hear this clearly. Transformation always feels lonely before it becomes visible. Butterflies grow in isolation before they ever fly in public. Seeds break underground before anybody sees the harvest, and chosen people often walk through seasons where nobody understands them because heaven is developing something too sacred to be interrupted by outside opinions. This is why your spirit suddenly craves solitude more than attention, because deep inside your soul already knows that what is coming next requires focus, wisdom, and spiritual maturity, and you cannot receive divine instructions clearly while constantly surrounded by noise, confusion, and emotional chaos. Recently, there have been nights where sleep felt impossible because your mind would not stop racing, moments where your heart felt heavy for reasons you could not explain, and you started wondering whether something was wrong with you emotionally. But the truth is, your spirit has been wrestling with transition. One version of you is ending while another version is trying to emerge, and living between those identities feels uncomfortable because the old you no longer fits while the new you has not fully appeared yet. This is why certain things that once made you happy now feel empty. This is why old conversations feel exhausting. This is why your tolerance for negativity has disappeared almost overnight, because your spirit is becoming aligned with a higher level of purpose, and that alignment naturally creates distance between you and environments that no longer match your future. The next part of this message will expose the hidden reason why people around you suddenly started acting differently the moment your spiritual growth accelerated. The reason some people have become uncomfortable around you lately is because your energy no longer matches the version of yourself they were familiar with. They became comfortable with the old you, the version that stayed available no matter how exhausted you felt, the version that constantly sacrificed personal peace just to keep everybody else emotionally comfortable. But now something inside you has changed. Your spirit is becoming stronger, your discernment is becoming sharper, and people can sense that your boundaries are no longer weak, even if they cannot explain it consciously. They feel the shift happening inside you, and this makes insecure people nervous, because transformation changes relationship dynamics. When you stop shrinking yourself, others are forced to confront the reality of their own stagnation. There are people who loved the version of you that constantly doubted itself because insecurity made you easier to influence, easier to manipulate emotionally, easier to keep connected to unhealthy cycles. But the moment heaven started restoring your confidence, those same dynamics began breaking apart naturally, and this confused you because part of you expected growth to bring everybody closer together, but spiritual elevation often creates separation before it creates alignment, because not everyone can grow with you at the same pace. Some people celebrate you, healing, while others secretly miss the broken version of you that needed them for emotional survival. And this is why discernment matters deeply in this season, because not everybody clapping for you genuinely wants to see you evolve completely. The enemy understands something about your future that you still struggle to fully believe about yourself. He knows there is influence inside you. He knows there is leadership inside you. He knows there is power inside your voice that could impact people deeply once you stop doubting your calling, and that is why the attacks against your confidence became so personal recently. Because insecurity delays obedience, and delayed obedience delays destiny. The enemy cannot cancel what heaven has already spoken over your life. So instead, he tries exhausting your mind until you become too afraid to move forward. He fills your thoughts with questions like, what if you fail? What if people reject you? What if you are not ready? What if you embarrass yourself? But those thoughts are not prophecy, they are distraction, because every chosen person in history felt fear before stepping into their assignment. Courage was never the absence of fear. Courage was choosing obedience even while fear still existed. And this next truth may confront you deeply, but you need to hear it. One of the biggest things holding you back was your addiction to being emotionally needed by people. Part of your identity became connected to rescuing others because it made you feel important, and because of that you ignored your own emotional needs for years. You stayed in draining situations longer than necessary. You tolerated disrespect just to avoid disappointing people. You abandoned your own healing just to remain available for everybody else's crises. And slowly your spirit became exhausted, trying to carry responsibilities heaven never assigned to you permanently. But God is breaking that unhealthy cycle now. He is teaching you that your purpose is bigger than being everybody's emergency contact. Your calling is not to constantly save people from the consequences of their own choices. Your calling is to become fully aligned with the assignment heaven specifically designed for your life. That realization feels painful because deep inside you still fear disappointing people once you stop overextending yourself emotionally. But hear this clearly: protecting your peace is not selfishness, setting boundaries is not cruelty, and prioritizing your spiritual health is not abandonment. Some people only felt comfortable around you when you were emotionally exhausted because your exhaustion benefited their convenience. But healthy relationships do not require you to destroy yourself just to maintain connection. And the moment you finally understand this truth, your entire life will begin changing. Faster than you expected, something unusual is happening in your spiritual atmosphere right now. The confusion that followed you for months is beginning to lose power. The emotional heaviness is starting to break slowly, and even though you still have moments of uncertainty, there is also a quiet strength growing inside you that refuses to give up anymore. That strength did not come from people. It came from surviving seasons that should have broken you completely. Every betrayal made you wiser. Every disappointment sharpened your discernment. Every lonely night deepened your connection with heaven. And now the same pain that once almost destroyed you is becoming the foundation of your future authority. The next few moments are important because what you are about to understand may completely change how you see your current season. You have spent too much time assuming your delays meant heaven forgot about you. But many of those delays were actually protection. There were doors you begged to open that would have destroyed your peace if they had opened too early. There were relationships you cried over losing that would have distracted you from your assignment permanently. There were opportunities you thought you missed that heaven intentionally removed because your spirit was not ready yet. And now looking back, you can slowly recognize that some unanswered prayers were actually divine redirections. Because God was never trying to punish you. He was preparing you for something bigger than your current understanding could fully comprehend. And here is where the shift becomes undeniable, the version of you entering. This next season will not tolerate what the old version accepted. Your standards are changing spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. You are becoming more intentional with your energy, more protective of your peace, more selective about who receives access to your heart. And this transformation may feel uncomfortable at first, because growth always requires separation from old patterns. But eventually you will realize that losing connection with unhealthy environments was necessary for your destiny, because your future cannot survive if your spirit remains attached to cycles heaven already called you out of. There are people who still expect you to remain the same because your growth forces them to confront the areas where they refuse to evolve themselves. And instead of celebrating your transformation, they may criticize it, misunderstand it, or distance themselves from it completely. But do not allow their discomfort to become your limitation, because the assignment over your life is too important for you to spend another year shrinking yourself just to keep insecure people comfortable around you. You were not created to stay hidden forever. You were not called to live beneath your spiritual potential, and you were never meant to spend your entire life carrying everybody else's emotional burdens while ignoring your own destiny. The reason this message feels personal tonight is because heaven has been trying to remind you who you really are beneath the exhaustion, beneath the fear, beneath the confusion, beneath the heartbreak. There is still purpose inside you. There is still anointing inside you. There is still fire inside your spirit even after everything you survived. And no matter how many setbacks tried to discourage you, heaven never removed its hand from your life. Even in moments when you doubted yourself completely, God was still guiding your steps. Quietly behind the scenes, and before this part ends, I need you to remember something powerful. The isolation was never evidence that you were forgotten. It was evidence that you were being prepared privately for something public. Heaven often develops chosen people in hidden places before revealing them openly, because true strength is built in silence, long before it becomes visible to crowds. And very soon the same people who misunderstood your season of withdrawal will realize they were witnessing transformation the entire time. If you are still listening to this message right now, then understand something powerful. Your spirit was meant to hear these words because heaven has been trying to awaken a version of you that fear kept hidden for too long. And the reason your life has felt uncomfortable recently is because you can no longer fit inside the small identity you once created just to survive painful seasons. The old version of you kept apologizing for being different, kept shrinking dreams to avoid criticism, kept doubting purpose every time challenges appeared. But that season is ending now because God did not preserve your life through every battle just for you to remain trapped in insecurity forever. There is a greater assignment waiting on the other side of your obedience, and deep inside your soul, you already feel it pulling you towards something bigger, something deeper, something impossible to ignore any longer. For a long time, you thought your greatest struggle was the people around you, but the real battle was happening inside your own mind. The enemy convinced you that playing small was safer. He made you believe hiding your gifts would protect you from rejection. He whispered that staying quiet would prevent disappointment. But all those lies did was delay the calling heaven placed over your life, because every time you ignored your purpose, your spirit became restless. Every time you betrayed your own intuition, your peace disappeared, and every time you settled for less than what God showed you in private, your heart felt heavier, not because you were failing, but because your soul knew you were created for more than survival. There were nights when you cried silently, asking heaven why everything felt delayed, why doors kept closing, why certain people walked away, why loneliness followed you even in crowded rooms. But now you are beginning to understand that many of those painful moments were preparing your spirit for this exact season, because the person you are becoming could never be built inside constant comfort. Strength had to be developed through pressure, discernment had to be developed through betrayal, wisdom had to be developed through disappointment, and faith had to be developed during moments when nothing around you made sense. Every difficult season carried a lesson your future will eventually depend on, and here is the truth. The enemy never wanted you to realize. You survived every attack that was supposed to destroy your confidence. You survived every betrayal that tried to harden your heart. You survived every lonely season that tried convincing you to quit on yourself. And even after everything you faced, there is still vision inside you. There is still hope inside you. There is still purpose breathing inside your spirit. Which means heaven is not finished with your story yet. The fact that you are still standing after everything proves there is something greater over your life than the pain you experience. The next season of your life will require courage, because God is about to place you in situations where your faith must become louder than your fear. There will be opportunities that stretch you beyond your comfort zone, conversations that force you to stop hiding your voice, decisions that require complete trust even when you cannot see the full outcome yet. And this is why heaven isolated you first, because confidence built in isolation cannot be easily destroyed by outside opinions. God needed you to learn how to hear His voice clearly before elevating you into spaces where distractions will multiply around you. Soon, you will notice the shift becoming visible in your daily life. Your energy will feel lighter, your mind will feel clearer, your spirit will stop begging for acceptance from people who never valued your heart correctly, and the things that once drained you emotionally will slowly lose their power over you, not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because your perspective changes completely. You will finally realize that not every closed door was a loss, not every goodbye was abandonment, and not every delay meant rejection. Some endings were divine protection guiding you toward the future heaven